All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is about 3:59. We'll be getting started here in a minute. All I'm gonna say is when you come up to the podium to present your project, please make sure that you sign in and speak into the microphone. We do record and smile. You're live on YouTube. Just so that I can do the minutes for the meetings. So I will turn this over to the chairman, and once the bell tolls for us, we should be good to go.
There you go. Perfect timing. I'd like to call the May 18th, 2023 Town of Somerville Design Review Board meeting to order. First order of business is approval or modification of the minutes. It's been brought to my attention that Candy was marked as absent and she was here, and Greg was marked here and he was absent. So we could just
No, that was just a minor error. I will correct that and get that ready for your signature later.
already. And then it looks like there's no signs to talk about. First order of business is main road self-storage. You can walk up, make sure you sign in and state your role in the project, please. And we'll go ahead and get started with Tim reading the staff comments.
This is a request for final approval of a proposed new self-storage facility on Paradise Point. Property zone GB general business. Currently vacant land, and the project was last in front of the board November 17th, 2022, where it received preliminary approval with comments. Following your staff's comments, the proposed layout meets the required buffer depth on all sides, requiring a buffer. The required 8-foot landscape border along the drive aisle to the rear of the property is proposed to be met. The required landscaping in that border does not have the continuous row or staggered row of evergreen shrubs with a minimum expected height at maturity of 3 feet. And the landscape border for the drive aisle is also missing the required canopy trees every 40 feet. Wax myrtle and crepe myrtle are not considered canopy trees and do not meet the planting requirements for the border plantings. The proposed red maple do not do well adjacent to asphalt or concrete. The reflected heat damages the trees. It's recommended that an alternative canopy tree of minimum 3-inch DVH be used. The 5-foot front planting requirement must meet section 8.4.2 of the UDO. A signage plan has not been submitted. The building is proposed to have metal panel cladding and a brick veneer for the central main entrance. Brick pilasters have been added to the drive aisle facing the facade, and the design should be consistent with chapter 4, section 4.5 of the UDO. The photometric plan does meet the lighting requirements. So let me get to there. One thing that was not addressed in the staff report that was brought to my attention by Bonnie Miley, the town engineer, this existing easement here where my cursor is ends at the property line, and there is a potentially a 30 to 36-inch pipe that cuts across to Paradise Point and over to drainage that goes out to the sawmill. She noted that that is not currently being shown on the plan, and there may or may not be an easement there, and that will need to be something that is addressed as it moves forward, because right now the building would be over that pipe, that drainage pipe. So something will have to be done either to reroute it and, you know, get an easement on that, because it is conveying water from Bacon's Bridge to the sawmill. So it is a concern with that layout. And I know those comments have been shared with the applicant a couple weeks ago. They had applied for last month to be reviewed, and they asked to be held to today. So just so you're aware of that situation, but other than that, staff comments are what they are, and I can turn it over to the applicant to present.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, everybody. I think Tim did a great job summarizing it, but just to recap, we're proposing 119,000 gross square feet on the self-storage here. The remaining major civil issue is what Tim was just referring to, identifying what's going on with this. Based on a field visit this afternoon, a pipe was not identified there. So we're going to be working through those remaining civil items with Bonnie. If we do need to reroute anything, that will certainly be accomplished throughout the remaining of the civil. I believe largely the comments related to DRB are for the architectural. So if there aren't any other civil questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the architectural side of things. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patricia Tsai, and I'm with Siemens Architectural Group. One of the major comments in regards to the front elevation was to try to have the brick mimic the adjacent building. We studied the building a little bit, and we started incorporating a lot of the soldier brick into the windows. We incorporated, we'll be incorporating the color as well. So we started doing a little mock-up of pictures to trying to be able to see the type of brick that's out there. So we ended up doing the renderings with the color similar to the adjacent building. We're adding the window casing all around to give it more of a detail in depth of what we're trying to pursue, and be able to start making it look like a building that we had discussed from prior meetings. On the side elevations, there is comments noted to break the building so it doesn't look so long on one of the sides. If next slide there. We started incorporating shutters. These shutters are also represented on the Harris Teeter Shopping Center area. There's so we're trying to mimic something similar to it, where we can have shutters placed on the facade. They will not have the windows inside, as there is storage inside, but this will be able to show the breakdown of the long facade from the driveway entrance. On the other side, on the northeast side, we have the staircase that has an screen enclosure, and breaking it down the facade and start making it more presentable. There will be a lot of taller trees in that area, as you can see at the bottom of A 2.2. We have a lot of trees that we'll be keeping in place, and that will be able to show on the renderings. They are at the top of the page. We have updated the all of the renderings showing the building with its different type of siding, being able to show. You can scroll down one. The updated one. Sorry for the inconvenience. We can provide with the renderings, but we did try to incorporate all of the details that are on to the side of the building. So then that way the building is not plain. It starts to look more of a structure, and it has a lot more detail into the front to be able to incorporate that, and the elevations actually show that. We can go down to the elevation pages down below. Yeah. So that was a couple of the architectural questions that was brought up to last meeting. The windows having the detail and the being able to provide casing on the windows with the siding and being able to break down the long facade. I believe those were the architectural questions.
So, sure, can you just very quickly highlight what were the changes from your last submittal, because the drawing says October, I think. Just like, you had shutters, you did this, do that, if you wouldn't mind just repeating that real
The
quick.
brick facade, we added soldier coursing into the brick for the windows to mimic the neighborhood or the side building. So we mimicked that. We added the soldier coursing in there with the logo. Then we added casing into the windows to and start being able to break down the facade on the driveway entrance. We started putting in the shutters, and we started breaking down the longitudinal facade that we had. Those were the questions that was brought up from last meeting.
Alrighty, thank you. Peter, do you have a question, comment?
So the south elevation that's being shown, that's not updated?
The south elevation will not be seen by anybody other than brick coming in and going into the parking lot. That wasn't one of the elevations that needed to be updated.
Is the beige material on all the elevations? I only see one note on the south, vertical corrugated metal.
Yeah,
Is that
it's
what
gonna
it
be,
is?
vertical corrugated, and then the siding, we're gonna have as a beige color, trying to mimic the surrounding areas, which the closest one would be the Harris Teeter. So you could see some of the beige coloring there, and
Yeah, that's a hardy lap on the front and metal on the sides.
So the south elevation beige is metal. Right,
The south is correct. That's the very rear of the building.
Right.
Least visible side. I don't believe there have been comments on that.
but it's metal. It says vertical
Yes, sir.
corrugated, okay.
Yes.
Then the front on this slide, the north elevation, that's hardy.
Yes.
Okay.
In the brick. Yeah.
So that's horizontal metal on the south elevation, correct?
I believe so.
Yes.
That's what the drawing shows horizontal.
Yes, sir.
Well, it says vertical.
So the note is incorrect?
It says vertical corrugated metal panel.
No, that's on the top. The gray part on the top. And that's on the side, on the ends, but not, the main body is horizontal.
Yeah, so there's a band. You see that little bit of different color at the top. That band changes direction.
Top, bottom, the two corners.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Tim, can we see the site plan again? And just point out where the elevation is that won't be seen?
Paradise Point is towards the pond, and in order to be seen, you have to come in into the driveway. The back area where the south elevation is, it's actually up higher. There's a current shopping center, that's pretty much run down a little bit. That would be the only thing that, would be able to see the back area, but from the street on Paradise Point and from, Bacon's Bridge, you won't be able to see the south elevation, which is the rear.
Greg, did you have any comments?
I think I was critical of the project when it came in before. I know the rest of you voted for it. I did not. Have a lot of concerns about the project. And the two things I always think about is a building sort of extending or creating an interesting urban fabric, engaging with its neighbors. And I think the fact, and that's what makes Somerville, this area, the way it is. I think I've been in 10 or 12 buildings in Somerville, but I've walked through it, driven by it, love it. It's the space that the buildings create and how they enliven each other. And the fact there's no context plan, it's showing me that you're not even thinking about the neighbors and how the experience of this people coming and going to this building and the neighbors can create or extend a pedestrian focused fabric. So that's my number one concern. Second one, I mentioned about the kink in the back. It's like a really weird shaped building instead of like, if you're a storage building, it seems like it should be a rectangle. I know it's a utilitarian building. I realize we need storage, people need storage, but I just don't see any kind of redeeming architectural feature. If you said, well, we're going to put all our effort in the front facade and everything else is going to be really simple, I think that's a good concept. But when you look at the main facade, I'm like, is that really a nice building? It's just kind of like, it just doesn't, it's not interesting. And I think there's some interesting self-storage buildings. The one up by Nexton off of I-26 is a little modern, but it's interesting. It's not expensive, but it's interesting. There's one downtown on the Meeting Street exit off I-26. It's interesting. It's a little overdone, but when I look at this, I just don't see. All right, it's utilitarian. Let's make a nice facade. I look at the facade. Can you go back to the facade? And I just I don't know. It's like, I just feel like you could see that anywhere in across the country. And I look at it and say, is that Somerville? Does that look like any notion or resemblance or distant cousin to the Somerville I just don't see it. It might be there. I just don't understand it. And it hasn't really been explained how it relates to this area. It just seems like it's a lot. It's a big building and there's nothing contributing to, as far as I can tell, contributing to the greater good of the community.
I think the idea is currently right now where we have Paradise Point, it is a sort of like a entrance off of Bacon's Bridge, and Bacon's Bridge is a lot taller and it slopes down to Paradise Point. Taking a look and studying the buildings that are there, we're essentially in the back of Harris Teeter, so we're looking at a liquor store across the street with the hair salon there, and the lot itself is a little bit run down. The street needs a little bit of maintenance. There's a lot of cracks on the road, as well as the aisle there. But this Paradise Point turns around and goes into a residential community. So the idea is not to bring sort of this modern look into this smaller corner of a street, because we're not on Bacon's Bridge, we're actually on a side road, and being able to sort of see what we're incorporating and what we're dealing with as far as existing buildings. So on the right-hand side, that would face the building would be the back area of Harris Teeter. So there's not much to look at there. The parking lot still needs some maintenance. It is run down as well. And then the corner where Paradise Point turns into from Bacon's Bridge, we have a solid brick building, 1-story liquor store, and the salon on the left-hand side. I think the only thing that would be able to have more of a architectural texture and having to have more of a feel of what's there currently that we can incorporate. We didn't want to do anything that comes out as modern because then it would definitely stand out. Something that I know the topics were, do we really want to have this building incorporated and stand out? The last conversation was no, we wanted to be able to incorporate as to what is there. So that's what we try to do. We're not trying to make it a unique building, but enough to be able to say, we're adding to the side street that's currently there being faced by the back of the building. And essentially trying to add the lighting, the pond, it starts giving it more of a feeling where you can walk on this part of the street, because right now you can't.
You have successfully blended with the existing structures, which is the old Charleston Lighting Building, which we built, the Harris Teeter Shopping Center that we did. So I'm very familiar with the surrounding buildings, and you've successfully blended.
I just want to say, we picked this site because it's second. All right.
Greg, Brian Buck, I'm the owner of the project. And I just want to let you know, Greg, we actually chose this site because of the second row. A lot of municipalities are sensitive to these bigger buildings being on the main street. The ones that you mentioned are on a main, thoroughfare. So building's not going to be very visible from the main street. So just want to let you know, we were sensitive to where this was going to go. We're matching the Harris Teeter. We're trying to match the old Charleston Lighting Building. That was our plan. So. Yep.
Any other comments? Am I right? Peter? Candy, any comments? No. Just, can we look at the street, the plan one more time? Maybe even a perspective? Just scroll through the first, yeah. That's fine. So I'll freeze it right there. So that's Charleston Lighting at the top, or right in the center there, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a long place now. But yeah, that would be the only architectural building that we can sort of mimic and incorporate with what we have there. Paradise Point starts from Bacon's Bridge. It dips down about 10 feet. So one full story comes down and it's actually a steep slope. So you don't essentially see the full 4 stories of the building. If you were in the aerial view as shown on the left-hand side, you would start seeing the mass of the building. But the one down below, because there is a lot of taller trees, there is their parking lot there on the front, you barely start seeing, might be able to see a logo in the back of it.
Our finished floor is about 15 feet lower than Charleston Lighting.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, how much taller is this building than Charleston Lighting? Do you know?
Actually, no, I believe we have a side elevation that's almost the same. The tower is the one the existing
two
tower is a
stories.
taller one. So we're trying to match what's there.
All right, so from Bacon's Bridge, there's gonna be 2 stories above what we're calling Charleston Lighting, right? Okay. So Tim, let's go back to the aerial again. Or yeah, these are fine. Yeah. So the brick facade on your building is facing Paradise Point,
Yes.
that entry road. Okay. Can we go to the elevation on Paradise again? Or even these perspectives, if you have one? About the only comment I have, I think, I mean, not that I disagree with you, Greg, but the only comment I think I have is, and this is for board discussion first, is would it look better if it was that first floor was all brick instead of these kind of three different panels?
Don't think it makes any difference.
Oh, you don't see it? Okay. All right, any further discussion?
I think this looks 100% better than the first iteration that we saw several months ago. And as far as storage buildings go, it's a pretty good looking building.
Thank you.
I think they have sounds like they have a long way to go on landscape. Chip, have y'all looked at those staff comments at all for that? Okay. So they're asking for final approval. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for final approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion. Well, how's the rest of the board feel about how they can accomplish the landscaping? Is that something they can work with staff? Okay. So Matt, that part of your motion is they work with,
Yes, absolutely. Once they get the landscaping squared away, then they're off to the races.
okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of final approval with conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, next is 227 Stallsville Loop.
So the first item under new business is a request for preliminary and final approval for the addition of a new dumpster enclosure and reduction of the required buffer. Property zone GB General Business. It's located at 227 Stallsville Loop. So this recently came through you guys. They've finished construction and they've determined that a dumpster enclosure is needed. Best location for the dumpster enclosure is at the end of the parking lot here. We're at the turnaround essentially. What that does though is it reduces the buffer from 15 feet to I had it in the staff report 7 feet. And it is within the board's authority to grant this requested exception. So you can see it will be visible from the street, but this was really the best possible location for the proposed pad. At this point, I will turn it over to the applicant and see if they have anything they want to add.
Going. Name's Alex Philo, representing general contractor, Cone Construction. Also have the owner here with me, Travis Estes. Just kind of wanted to go ahead and mention that we were planning on putting this kind of back here mostly because it's a 1 acre property. Obviously the building, the parking lots takes up a huge portion of it. And this was kind of the best place for it. Got power lines running right down Limehouse Drive to kind of prevent anything by that front entrance. Really try not to take away from any of the parking currently on the property. So this was the best spot. Kind of worked with the selected waste management company that they're going to be using. And kind of coordinating that they would be okay with coming all the way back here, coming earlier in the mornings to kind of get it so they wouldn't have any issues with hitting vehicles, obviously in the parking lot. So this is kind of why we picked it here. It's kind of tucked away as far back into the property as you could be. And the plan was to screen it with similar fencing 6-foot privacy fencing and staining it white, to kind of make it also blend in. You can see it from the road, like I said, from that other photo, but I mean, with the gate in front of it, you'd have to know the distinction between it and the fence behind it, kind of that it was there. So it should be pretty well blended away from any public view other than the times they come to pick up.
Thank you. Can you go to the picture that has the fencing? Because you did not provide any dumpster details, correct?
Not any official drawings. This was just the detail from given to us from the management group that they like to us to adhere to. We kind of shrunk it. They call for 12 by 12. We shrunk it a little bit so we didn't disturb any of the current landscaping that was approved already.
And what is the use next door? What's your neighboring use?
So currently it's just open tenant space. It has not been assigned.
But looks like a house in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry, that is a bed and breakfast, with also some sort of attached agricultural farming. They do go.
They run a short-term rental and they have some backyard, like hens and things like that, but
Goats and cows and things of that nature.
I hope they don't have goats and cows.
Yeah, they're back there. She's quite the petting zoo back there. But we've added our fence and she does have a fence additionally behind that one as well, directly right behind it. That's just a typical same fence, not painted. And
I don't really have an issue with it. I think if you have shown it in the first place, this is probably where you would have put it.
yes,
The only issue I have is the lack of details.
understood. And I apologize, this is one of my first times doing this, so
Sure,
a little bit more education on that.
sure.
It's gonna be a wood fence, right?
It's gonna be a wood fence, yes. It's similar to what you see there.
Yeah, that's the answer to this. Your
I-
fence,
I'm sorry,
emulating the fence.
emulating, that's correct. With a swinging gate, 2 swinging gates, as you kind of saw in that little detail.
Yeah, but there's lots of fences around town just like this where the gates have failed. You know, so that's, or they're left open or they sway down. So they would have to be built maybe with a metal frame so that doesn't happen, or,
We
you
can
know,
absolutely do
closing and
that.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think we need to specify metal frame, Chris, because if you don't do a metal frame, it'll fail.
Correct, yeah.
Wood gates won't last on a dumpster. And you need pipe bollards in front to protect the two corners.
Understood.
I mean,
I,
go ahead, Peter, sorry.
I actually think setbacks have a purpose. And there should be a very severe hardship indicated as to why you want to put a structure in the setback. So if you go back on the site plan, why is this the only location?
It doesn't currently take away from any of the parking locations. Again, the other place we were thinking about putting it would be very close to the current entrance. But because of overhead power lines along the road, make it pretty dangerous for anybody to want to grab this dumpster and then dump it into however they dispose of it on the side or the back.
What is this sort of island?
The
Required tree island.
The
tree island, yes, yeah. Couple of tree islands there. And there also is not shown there. There are some Dominion site light poles also around the property for site lighting. That also kind of limited some of our locations as well.
If we weren't already built, my suggestion would have been to take away 2 parking spaces. They could still take away 2 parking spaces, but I think the dumpster would still end up being where it is.
And that was a point of discussion and kind of went with the owner and the civil engineers to try to figure that out. But we were really trying to avoid that because of how large the building is, the potential for multiple clients or tenants, I'm sorry, as there's 1 right now, but 2 more in the future. Not sure what their type of traffic would be for potential customers and not really trying to take away from it. That was kind of the thought process with that. And I understand what you're saying. I wish we had kind of incorporated that a little bit better into the design. This is unfortunately an afterthought.
I think we probably asked about it when it was brought to us the first time. I recall, could be wrong. Peter, any other comments? Any other comments to my right?
Are you overparked? So
Not
if you were
currently.
to eliminate some parking for this dumpster,
I'm sorry.
what is that? If you were to eliminate existing parking spaces for this dumpster,
So
what is your parking ratio?
currently, there's only one portion of the building has a tenant in it. The other two are just open right now, so it's hard to say whether or not us taking away 2 spots is gonna impact their business, I guess. or
What is your total building square footage?
It's 7,500 square feet.
7,500 square feet.
And what does the ordinance call for all the fees for?
It's for a straight office, it's 2 per 1,000 square feet. It's 2 per 1,000 square feet for an office.
It's
But
on this sheet.
Yeah.
It should be up there.
I can't see. it.
It's
Let's say 15 extra spaces.
building.
So you're required to have 15 and you got actually over parked by how
I
much?
think
What-
it's 23 spaces.
What I would
He's
say
got
is this,
38 and he needs 23. So he's overparked by 15.
I'm going to jump in on that. Medical offices, which an orthodontic office
It's medical.
qualifies as a medical office, is required to have higher parking. I can't remember the exact ratio, but they are always notoriously underparked, even when they meet and or exceed by more than double what our minimum parking requirement is, because there are the dental hygienists,
So what is
the admin, et cetera.
They over parked or are they? about-
I think they're right where they should be.
Okay, so they're not over parked. That's the point.
I don't think that they are overparked.
To me, it passes the eyeball test as far as they have the number of parking spaces they need.
I think that's fine. So I think where they're putting the thing is the least obnoxious and most practical location to put it. Unless they fill in part of their detention pond and stick it in over there. But then that's gonna look like the devil and terrible, and they're gonna lose wastewater space. Nobody wants a dumpster up front. Because no matter what you do, they're a mess.
Sure.
The traffic count on Limehouse Road or Drive or whatever that is, probably is 25 cars a day. Ain't real busy, I don't think.
Stalls, yeah, so Limehouse is not that busy. Stalls,
Stallsville's busy.
Very busy.
Limehouse is unheard of, never even heard of
yeah,
it.
there's not too much traffic down that road.
So nobody's gonna see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. Let's let her blow.
Right, I mean, and you're mostly focused on coming to that stop sign point. You're not really looking all the way down to that point, in my personal opinion. And especially if it blends in with the gate behind it, I don't see it being a thing. I do understand what you mean by the longevity of just using a wood fence and posts and things like that. So we'll definitely come back with a stronger metal system. So it lasts a lot longer and looks a lot better, of course.
Can you flip to pictures of the building, please? While he's doing that, any comments on the left? Greg or Candy?
I agree with Bill. I think by and large that, we would use typically 4 per 1,000 to 5 per 1,000 for a building like this parking. So I would say 30 would probably be kind of our low end. Regardless of what the minimums are, just from a practical nature. So I'd hate to see them lose 2 spaces. I think it's fine. I don't know what else. I don't think it's a better place to put it. I don't think it's worth taking away 2 parking spaces for it either. Now, I am concerned about the neighbor and I hope the neighbor knows it's going closer than zoning allows and they had an opportunity to come and complain if they wanted to. But if they're not complaining about it, I think it's fine.
Only other concern I have is again, this is for board discussion, but I'd rather see at least throw out there that the dumpster enclosure should match the building more than it should the adjacent fence. But y'all think the adjacent fence is fine, then I'm fine with that. I'd rather see it be hardy than just a dog-eared you know, fence you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. I'd rather see a more robust detailing to match the building, but that's just me.
Did the board want to see any additional landscape screening to help block the sides? I mean, there are some landscaping requirements that should be met, so.
Yeah, I think I noticed that. Thank you for that, Tim. It was a little sparse on that side. Now that there's a dumpster, it probably needs to be higher to screen it, maybe 5 to 6 feet height at planting would be a recommendation, or higher.
5 that are higher. So you're saying,
Mhm. And irrigated.
irrigate, sure.
Any further discussion? Would anyone like to make a? Peter, do you have anything? Anyone like to make a motion? They're asking for final approval.
Final approval motion.
Any further discussion or any conditions? Conditions being the landscaping
And the metal gate.
and metal
Face.
framework,
Yeah.
metal framing. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed. Okay. All set. All right. Thank you so much. Next is 107 West 6 North Street. Again, to sign in and state your role in the project, please.
So the second item under new business is a request for preliminary and final approval for proposed exterior painting of the property at 107 West 6 North Street. The applicant is requesting to repaint the exterior of the building to give it a fresher look. The proposed change exceeds 50% of the front facade and requires DRB approval. Pretty straightforward. See the existing, proposed, and I will turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, I'm Nate Boykin with the Milton Group. This property is a little bit further north, a little west of North Main Street. It's just going to need a little bit of a refresh. This is the original paint scheme that we're looking at, a little bit dated. And so we've just got a two-tone color scheme where we have these recesses with a little bit of an accent color on all 4 sides. We'll be applying these 2 paint colors. The line going around the building is a different bit of a different texture, so we're still going to be able to see that character of the existing because it will have a different sheen and different tone as to the more gravelly texture of the rest of the facade. There are also some existing light fixtures, if you can scroll down, that are kind of a cage fixture that we will be replacing with a cleaner looking, similarly sized surface mounted cylinder. It's kind of like a gravelly, looks like a precast kind of panel, some cast in place, kind of that 70s rocky. Yeah, kind of like graveled stucco. Yeah, I believe so, yeah. I do not know. I'm not sure. Owner doesn't know either.
Can you, Tim, can you go to the colors, that 3rd or 4th one down?
I have larger swatches.
Oh, great.
Those.
Yeah. Can you go to the rendering, Tim? Wish you could touch. So. All right. So this is only the interior courtyard or the interior hallway.
Yes.
So-
Yes, the sides,
The-
that's the major building color, yes.
So the entire building is this color exterior.
Yes, and if you look at the side elevations, there are recesses on the side as well. If you can go up. Yes.
Yeah.
So those are also recessed on either side, so those recesses and sides. will
Well, it
also-
looks like there's a white stripe too under
So the
the,
white stripe is just gonna be the different, it's the same color applied, it's just gonna have a different reflective character to it. Because it is like a smooth concrete, so
okay.
it's a different material, it's not just a painted stripe on there now. It's a change of material that's, feels more like kind of like a precast element, so it's gonna, have a flatter surface, so you should be able to see it, it'll stand out even though it's all painted the same color.
I always thought that building was split face, just driving by over the years, split face block.
Yeah.
It may be, huh?
It's not.
No,
I don't know if it was. Jack Baxter with City Evolve, so we're the owner's rep for the owner, and one of the owners is here, Dylan Morgan. But since we've gotten a look on the inside of the wall too, I don't know if they came in prefabricated or if it was like some kind of shotcrete on site, but there's a metal lathe behind there that attaches, and exactly, yeah.
Is the base of the existing building, has there been a deterioration? Is it in pristine condition? Because you're not doing anything with the base. This, I guess, stone material just goes to the sidewalk
Yes, it does.
and it's been durable.
Yeah,
Do you have any existing pictures versus renderings?
yes.
somebody just showed some pictures.
So there's an existing picture in there, yeah.
Something
And
closer.
you'll probably see some closer on the a little bit closer on the right and left of those bottoms.
Mr. Gregor Candy.
I like it. I think it looks good. I'm wondering about the poor old coping on the top. And what is that gonna do to your pristine white facade?
Is this a good example of how, where we like to share that? Share it.
Yeah.
We had worked on a building in North Charleston for another group on West Montague. Now that was a red brick building with some different split face block, similar with different kind of masonry textures. That was pretty rundown looking, and we did a color samples on that and ended up going with kind of the extra white that Nate had showed, and it really looked good versus two-toning it or trying to do something different there. We did have some questions on the coping on that building, and so one way to approach it would be to match the storefront windows, which was a darker, like a dark bronze, but we ended up leaving it white. Looked sharp, but the coping will need to be, that would be painted too. We would not leave it as an existing condition.
That was my question. You're gonna
Yeah,
paint
yeah,
that
we
color?
would paint, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I should have asked the question differently.
Okay, that'll stand out.
Yep. And the window frames are white already,
They're clear and
clear anodized. Well, it certainly looks better than it does now. I think it's pretty interesting.
Any other comments? They're asking for preliminary and final.
Make motion, preliminary final approval.
Right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Appreciate it. Next is 507. Oh, you can, yeah, you can have this back. Next is 507 North Laurel Street.
So the next item on the agenda is a request for preliminary and final approval for proposed exterior painting. The property at 507 North Laurel Street. property zoned NMX. This actually was before you guys a couple of months ago for an addition on the back and straightening out the roof line on it on the front. They finished up, and I'll let them explain some of the details in regards to the brick and why they're painting the brick. But that's pretty straightforward. So I'll hand it over to Nancy and let her explain the project.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Nancy McEwen, as Tim said, with TEPCO. And as I said before, the building that we had added is on the back of this building. This building is about 60, 70 years old, we believe, maybe 50 only. But what came across is the brick in the back just is not matching this 50 to 60-year-old brick. And on top of that, it doesn't look like from this picture. This picture is only taken a few weeks ago, so it's still under construction. So a lot of the landscaping looks bad now because it's 2 months into construction. You can't see it from the back front. But it's a really dark, low roof line, and we want to brighten and refresh this look, similar to the next slide that we've been seeing in the area. A couple different things though. We want to introduce this. The brick will be a white color. It says drift and mist up there, and that is the color. And I do have a sample here. It's not as beigey. It is a little brighter. And of course you can see the pure white with beige, and it's whiter as well. So the color on the shutters is actually the color in one of the next slides. It's a gauntlet gray. It's a real dark smoky gray. A softer look than black. This page is our inspiration page. This is what we showed the owner. The one in the middle is actually the gauntlet gray, right above the word inspiration. So this is the look that we're going for. Something very classic, something bright and pretty, and that's the new look. There's also one in the upper middle of the page that kind of shows a before and after. But the one on the bottom right, the one on the middle bottom, and the one kind of in the middle is the look. The only thing that we haven't come up with is the perfect blue green for the door. We're down to 3, which actually don't represent really well in the presentation. And we probably have about, 10 more. But we want to do some samples on the color door. The inside is all done in blues and grays and beige. So it's a really pretty mix. And everything inside, even in the older building, has been redone to match the new of the back addition. So we just want a fresh look, yet classic. And the next picture is other areas. I mean, these are all homes in the surrounding area. And something different that we think ours does is put a little bit more color in the shutters other than black, soften them a little bit, but not so soft that they disappear. And again, the one in the upper left is kind of our inspiration color. And the color that the door is now is similar to that. It's just, it's a little more on the green side than the inside of the blue. So the door is a little bit what more undecided. The next one, the next slide, Tim. So this is just taking the elevation that you guys saw originally with the roof line. And generally this is how we see the gauntlet gray on the shutters and on the peak. And then of course the canopy right now is canvas, and it's going to be black. It's going to remain. It looks pretty dirty in the picture, but that is black. We do want to give new lights to the front door, which is the blue door, bluish. And the light choice is similar to what you're looking at. That we are kind of leaning towards the middle and the one on the right. We want to just have a much brighter right now. If you could look back in the pictures, it's just an older light that just hasn't been replaced since forever. So so that's basically what we're looking at, a fresher, and it's in the dark. It's wooded. It's got some very massive trees around it, and it's just in a dark area, and we like to brighten it up and freshen it up and still give it a classical look. So
Thank you so much.
that's it.
And to the right, the Hardy is obviously staying kind of that gauntlet gray.
Yes, if you go back to the picture, Tim, I think it's, you barely see it. We had to get rid of some rot, maybe the next picture. Yeah,
Yeah.
you see where it's yellow right now? We had to get rid of some rot. It was a white, vinyl, I think it was. And underneath it had just been rotted out and it just kind of crumbled apart. So it was just, yeah, so we did have to change that. But it was already a white material of some sorts that was just, it just kind of, I don't know if it was termites or what, it just kind of fell apart.
Ready? Any questions or comments?
Oh, one other thing I did forget to mention is the ADA ramp, although it wasn't decided on at the time of the submission. The owners do want to paint that. They would like to put a solid stain on it. And our thought was to either put white or put the gauntlet gray on it. Or I'm sorry, the white drip mist or gauntlet gray. I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that. But it's held up well. I think there's a few pickets that we're just repairing, make them more secure, securing the rails, meets ADA requirement, and we want to freshen that up some more.
All right, thank you. For me, I think the color palette is fine. Whatever selection of door they want to make it fine. The same with the light fixture. While I don't like painted brick, I think this particular one, I just kind of want to throw that out there because I don't want to see painted brick because so much is get painted.
It's a brick
Yeah.
either. But in this case, we think it just brightens it. In fact, this 10-minute shot that I happened to take weeks ago happened to be bright and sunny that day, but it's usually dark. And yeah, this might be the only project that's going.
For me, I have to take it on a case by case basis. And I just don't want to see all of a sudden so many of these houses are renovated and they're all being painted. And we kind of go from being a brick town to a painted brick town. That's not someplace I want to go. But case by case basis. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have some concerns just with the presentation. Your reference project is spectacularly beautiful.
The inspiration.
The inspiration one. And that looks great. I think that would look great if it were black. I mean, it's a beautiful, simple design. And it's hard to, can you put that up on the screen?
What was that? I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
If that building in the upper left were black, it would still look great. It's a beautiful
It's
facade.
a beautiful home. It looks like it belongs up in the
Right.
creek somewhere. It is pretty. But it also showed how low, of course, we can't change much of this house. That's why we wanted to brighten this and shows just a straight across roof.
Well, that's, yeah, if I could finish my thought. You picked a very beautiful building that would look great no matter what color it was. And asking us to say, okay, we'll use this color on this building, which is less than your inspiration. And I still don't know exactly what it's going to look like based on the presentation. I think it's probably fine, but I didn't see a slide in here that really shows what the building's going to look like. Because it's like broken on the left instead of the whole facade. There's no shadow. There's no end elevation. It's just like, it's probably going to be okay, but
Well, if we go to the first slide. I'm sorry, second. Third, maybe. Okay, so yeah, I agree. Of course, that's in the $1 million range, I'm sure, or $2 million range. So that's pretty hard. But the color is there.
where is the,
similar color roof.
what I'm asking is, where is the drawing of your project with the colors? That's what I'm not seeing.
Well, the bottom one is everything but half
The
window.
building with, yeah,
Well, you know,
I'd just like to know what it looks like, that's all. The middle one.
yeah. So the one above that and to the right of the actual house photo. And the ones all in Somerville are similar, comparable, not $2 million homes. And
Yeah.
that's unfortunate that the coloring that we chose. But the one on the bottom left, I think is around the corner. It's an adorable home.
I don't think, maybe I'm not explaining myself.
Yeah, I think
I want to see,
that is it.
But-
Except half that window. There's really literally only 5 feet that are missing. That is the building. That is the drawing you guys saw.
that's it, with the break line.
Yes, that is it.
Yeah, to your point, Greg, is cut off.
It's just odd. There's no shadows. There's no sense of what it's really gonna look like. And again, I think it's fine. It's just. It'd be nice to say, have a better sense of, yes, this is what it's gonna look like.
Aside from.
Cause you have
doing-
like a gray roof, right? Not a white roof.
Correct.
So it's really not a great representation of what it's really gonna look like is my concern.
Greg is just saying that,
I-
and it's not just this submittal. We're not necessarily seeing drawings that are really accurate of what's gonna go here. And it's true on this too, because the roof's not white. We all know it's not white, but it's kind of showing it as white. And we're not seeing the sides of the buildings and that sort of thing. I think we all think it's going to be okay, but we're gonna have, and we've worked with y'all in the past, so there's a, level of trust and all that, but we've got to get away from just assuming it's gonna be okay. I think is not to put words in your mouth, but I think that's what Greg is saying, because sometimes it's not okay. So we as a board just have to be careful in,
And the
I
other,
know what you're saying, but let's see it on paper.
yeah, the
you
other
know.
piece of it is we can't give your guys special treatment because you're local and we trust you. We have to treat you just like everybody else. And if we're anybody else, I'd probably say, no, come back with some real drawings. So I don't want to set a bad precedent. We have to treat everybody equally. And the drawing is just not that great.
I do respect that. And I totally get it. But at what point does a small project like this, how do they afford an entire blown up 3D version?
Oh, no way. I never said that. No, don't put words, don't put words in my mouth. That's not what I said.
Yeah, just like a
I-
3D.
I did not say anything about expensive. I didn't say anything about 3D. I asked, I don't have a good sense what the building's really gonna look like. How you do that, I don't know. That's something you've got to figure.
We're
out
not saying it has to be, we did not say it has to be 3D, but like this, the building is cut off on the left-hand side. So, I mean, we can see it in our mind, but it is cut off on the left-hand side. We're not seeing the sides. I think that's probably a discussion we can have later and further, and maybe even with staff on kind of a complete submittal, but there are some things that are missing. I mean, I think we get it, but we have to have, we just have to see all those sides. It doesn't have to be 3D. We're not saying it has to be SketchUp, none of that, but we just have to see it, not just what you see from the street. But I think we can table that discussion and have it more later. Is there any other discussion? With the board?
I think if we go back to the handicap ramp handrail, my opinion would be to do it in the shutter color,
The gauntlet, right?
the gauntlet gray.
Right.
I love it.
Any other discussion? Right.
I think we really know what it's gonna look like, and it's gonna look much better than it does now.
Mhm. Yep.
I'm ready to approve.
Okay. Got a motion?
That's motion.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Appreciate that.
by that.
What?
Slip by.
Okay,
Question. I remember I presented a few months ago for a project and and I pretty much like PowerPoint and making things look real. And I took a project and actually photographed and made it, but you guys didn't like that either. And I actually did that to this house. I actually colored the front and I put in the shutters, but I thought, well, last time they didn't like that when I incorporated the real picture and changed it and made the wood features. So I was at a loss. So I took it out of the, yeah, But it looked really nice. I put the landscaping in and everything, and I went, no, they said no. So we'll try and make it better next time, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good conversation. All right, Parker's Kitchen at Sawmill.
So this is a request for conceptual review for a new Parker's Kitchen on Berlin G. Myers Parkway. Property zone GB General Business. This is at the intersection of Berlin Myers Parkway and Grandview Drive Extended Cross. It'll have a different name on that side, but we don't know what that is at the moment. The sawmill design guidelines have been provided in the packet for your reference. The proposed development will take a corner of the sawmill development. The plan is consistent with the requirements of the Edge Commerce design principles of the design guidelines. A landscape plan and a lighting plan are still required. A connection to the pedestrian path fronting Berlin Myers Parkway will be required. There should be a clear pedestrian path from the internal sawmill development road into the convenience store, and future cross-access drives should terminate at the property line, not 8 feet from the property line. The preliminary architectural design is also consistent with the sawmill aesthetic. The proposed design aesthetic of the sawmill development has previously been approved by the DRB. The Parker's design appears to be a low country design. It is similar to other previously approved locations in town. Standing seam metal roof and brick are proposed materials for the exterior. Colors and material samples have not been provided at this time. This is the site.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Thomas Matthews. I'm a real estate project manager with Parker's Kitchen. And basically tonight we're asking for conceptual approval. We have worked with Milton Thomas and Charles Muldrow through their internal ARB. We made the submittal for the CDRB before getting final approval with them. Since this is conceptual approval, we thought that would be okay. From Milton and Charles, we are still working on our brick choice, signage, canopy details, landscaping plan, metal roof selection, and they'd asked about the dumpster enclosure detail, but we do have that. But do want to say that we are not planning to paint or lime wash this store like we have previously on our other stores. And that was part of the sawmill development guidelines, that is not a painted brick, that it will be a standard laid brick that's just pointed up on site. So we have not made that selection yet, but we do have Wade Arnold, our architect with Kuhachi Peterson here, as well as Katie Concart with Kimley Horn, our engineer, if there are any questions. Thank you.
So can you tell us how, this may be an architecture question, how does this relate to sawmill? What I know it's different from your normal building. So how does it fit in?
Definitely. I mean, when we read the sawmill guidelines, the aesthetic was for a rural industrial aesthetic. And so our aesthetic typically on our Parkers is a little more, I guess you could say, refined than that. And so we've tried to added some more elements that are a little more rural, a little more rustic. In the niches on the side of the building, in the rear facade, we typically have inset brick that's in a herringbone pattern, and we replace that with a more barn door look. I'm not sure that material's been decided on quite yet, but that's what we've put in there to take away from some of the. Thank you. Those will not be functioning doors. That they're just part of the look. But we also, as opposed to having a flat roof, we added a gabled roof that is on both sides of the building, anchoring both sides of the building, that has a probably more like 1900 kind of industrial look to it, with the gable and an extended I guess height there above the niches in the windows. There are these posts that come out of the facade that are on our other buildings, but it is a more rustic look where the lantern is hanging directly from a hewn wood post. So to us, that speaks to the aesthetic of sawmill as well too. The canopy is matching exactly what the sawmill branch development guidelines called for, which is a single slope canopy with a metal roof on it. We do have some brackets on that as well too that are fairly simple. So again, I think what this development is going for was something that wasn't as, I mean, it's certainly kind of traditionally inspired, but not so much kind of classical, a little more industrial looking. And to us, this building has a more industrial, rural character than our standard stores do. And happy to let Wade answer since it's his design. If there are more questions.
How tall is the highest peak of this building? Any idea?
Hi, my name's Wade Arnold. I'm an architect with Quetching Peterson. The peak ridge of the tower is 27 and a half.
My only, my initial reaction, this is just supposed to be a conversation, you know, it's conceptual, just a reminder of that. So there's no vote, just want to talk through things. To me, it kind of looks like you're going, and I think you even said it kind of looks like a warehouse a little bit. To me, each bay is a little narrow to be a warehouse. And then the peaks on both ends, like the right end and the left end, to have a peaked roof seems, I can't recall warehouses that have peaked roofs at the end. Kind of. Okay.
That's sort of.
So I mean, just
We were really
what's
just
your
looking-
inspiration?
We're really just going for the classic, look, it's symmetry. And that's really what that was driven by is the symmetry.
And again, this has gone through Charles Muldrow with the developer, and so some of this direction that we took, obviously the design came from Wade, but the direction we took and the feedback we got was from them.
So I actually do want to add that the way the site is, I believe we have 3 primary facades. So we took all of the elements and wrapped it around the building as, typically on the back of buildings, we leave it kind of barren, but we brought all the elements all around all 4 sides that we think match the sawmill criteria.
I think what you're saying, I'll just rephrase it. You designed all 4 sides rather than leaving one
Yeah.
back of house,
Yeah,
right?
because three are primary, right? Because
Right.
you have three roads. I'm assuming they're primary at this point.
Yeah.
Replace Berlin Myers, yeah.
And that is also keeping with the guidelines of some of and that they understand that, there are multiple facades of this building within the development plan, the roads aren't everything, but the principal facade is to face the interior.
Okay.
Not to forget about facing the environment, but that the primary facade to facing the interior.
Yeah.
And also around that roundabout, it's kind of another section of the development that they wanted, primary facades facing. Activate that as well.
And is the site sitting down in a little bit of a hole?
It does, do you know how far down it is? Yeah, it drops from the sidewalk, back.
From King Road from the barn, it drops from Brighton all the way down is about 15 feet. So currently preliminary grading, we're looking at crossing the road to the building, it being about a 5-6 foot drop. Which is a part of the site design, and the multi-use path will likely end up with some sort of a short wall in between the path and the building.
Short wall with steps, maybe going up to the path or something. Yeah. And did you bring any, I think it was MUSC that's reapproved a couple months ago. Did you happen to bring any of those photos or that design package at all?
We don't have it, but it was shared with us.
Okay.
From the developer.
Yeah.
We have that and we were gonna work, again, we hadn't discussed break choices, really, material choices yet.
Mhm.
Correct. But that's something that we're gonna take into consideration as we start to make these choices.
Okay,
Is there a sidewalk connecting your property to the surrounding sidewalk along Berlin Myers?
Wow.
Okay.
There's the main infrastructure of the master development has sidewalk all around, kind of the roundabout, but it's all unnamed roads, so it's not helpful yet. But can add a connection.
I was looking on yesterday at your site on the old Mr. K's in Central Avenue. There's a lot of mechanical. I think on this, it'd be on this right side, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe it's on the left.
Yes, we can mirror the building and that side would be on the side facing the dumpster. So it's
Okay.
grease replication.
Right.
And this way, yeah, it's on here. It's this, yeah, it's correct.
Okay.
That's the side door where the kitchen is
Okay.
facing the dumpster.
Okay. Good. I don't think it was that way. I know it was super obvious at the Central Avenue one.
Central stuff since we're,
That's true.
Order there, so there's not
Yeah.
a good place to put it.
That's true. Yep. But
This would be better.
the outdoor dining looked pretty good, real good. Does this one have outdoor dining?
This does not have an outdoor bag. We found that those typically aren't very often. Unfortunately.
Never seen anyone use them, actually, now that you mentioned it.
The one on Central, is beautiful, it should be like a deal.
Yeah, but it's empty.
Yeah, they don't get used often.
And is,
We do have seating, we have, our building interior has changed where we do have more seating on the interior.
Yeah.
That does get utilized. That's
Okay.
sits up against the window.
I've used that myself. In King Bay. And is there a reason, well, typically we want to see foundation landscaping, but is there a reason you have sidewalk right up to the building, or are you planning on putting the foundation planting opposite the sidewalk?
Hard to see in here, but there are a little bit dedicated out for foundation.
I'm talking about on the Berlin Myers side and on, maybe not necessarily on the dumpster side, but the top right and bottom.
We discussed that the depth of the landscape buffers that we're providing sides really enhances enough landscaping to get a variance for meeting the foundation beds. We have space to have them 2 feet, but there is quite a lot of depth in those sides for it.
And then between the canopies and the building, it looks like maybe it's a 2 or 3 foot landscape. The building canopy,
Oh,
the
yes.
gas pumps.
Foundation.
Yeah, there should be a leave out in front of the building. If you look at the front elevation,
Back to the site plan.
on the right gable, left
Okay.
gable, there's a green wall will be there, and it's on a metal lattice. In front of a herringbone pattern brick.
All the way to the right and all the way to the left,
Yes.
correct?
And then it's also on the Berlin Myers side, you'll see it down below. So there will be a little leave out in landscape in the sidewalk for the, plants to grow up that.
So it's really just 2 feet or so to allow the vines to grow. You're not planning on any. Okay,
And we do planters as well underneath the niche for the patrons, but we typically don't do foundation.
So you screen the flat portions of the roof where the equipment's gonna be sitting on the roof. That's all screened off. You can see on your bottom elevation. You've shown hidden lines of where the equipment is on the roof. And the screen, and the facade screen, so that's all hidden. Both sides, all the way around.
Yeah, definitely the 3 sides, the Berlin Myers side, that parapet wall is what you see, and that's the wall beyond in the front. So we may need to do some more screening on that one.
It's shown as a hidden line, the equipment, like you got a parapet wall on the Berlin Myers side.
Yeah, that parapet stops at the brick, so,
Oh, it does, so it's not high enough to hide the equipment in.
well, and on a line of sight, yeah, like straight on, but if you're,
Right.
From the road and you do a line of sight drawing, you're not gonna see that. We haven't done one, we don't know the grading yet, but that's probably something we would need to decide record on.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
typically do that.
Yeah, we'll need that.
Yeah, yeah. because you'll see it from Berlin Myers for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What is this item on the left side elevation? Is that that's a ladder?
Required.
Correct, that's a reply.
And it gets interrupted by,
If you're,
oh, that's the door to,
And then the other things you see are the panels, electrical panels. So that's the quote unquote not great looking side because the mechanical things have to go there.
but that's the driveway side, isn't it? No?
No,
No,
that's
it's between the dumpster and the building.
Oh, that's the dumpster side.
This one. Okay. Left side elevation. Yep. And
we
then,
still need to find a way to screen the electrical panels.
Yeah.
Just come 3 foot off the panel with a screen item.
what's that screen?
You can use masonry. Whatever, compatible with the building.
We would, in this case, we would paint it the same color as the wall behind it, the barn door.
Whatever your barn doors are doing, or just use, you could use brick or masonry.
yeah, I think just an architectural feature, or something permanent, not planting, because that doesn't seem to work. And then I know I would assume you don't have a dumpster enclosure detail, but that would want to be taller. Again, because that site distance from Berlin Myers.
Is there?
I think there might be.
There should be.
I think it's-
There should be a canopy proposal. Yeah. Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, I see it down there. Yeah, just check the height on that. I think it's gonna have to be taller than normal, I would think.
What colors are you thinking about for the standing seam roof?
It's typically galvanum. It's.
Which
yeah,
is
it's
what?
just silver. It's anodized and it's a pack clad. that we use to steam this. It's been that's storefront will be anodized silver. That's the roof.
I would like you to, if you know that you're gonna have vending machines or anything like that, go ahead and show them on this. So full transparency, we all know they're gonna go there or they're not gonna be there or whatever, because that happened at Teeter. Noticed yesterday, all these vending machines popped up. We didn't review those at all.
What's that?
Vending machines, ice machines, that kind of stuff. At Teeter, they're all, the new Teeter gas station, they're all over it.
Oh, gas station.
Yeah.
They're all outside.
Yeah. Between the gas pumps.
The only thing we would have is a propane. We don't do that.
no-
Ice outside, it's inside at our
And the
stores.
propane is shown on that other elevation, the photo, the other side, panels, propane, ladder. So they're all shown here.
Okay.
They don't, yeah, there's no ice merchant. Yeah.
Greg?
Is this open 24 hours? Do you open? You are.
Yes, sir.
And this is for conceptual.
Conceptual.
Okay. So it's not a huge deal. I would, I wasn't sure can you go back to the elevations? When one says like front and one back, which is the Berlin elevation?
Rear would be the Berlin G Myers side.
Okay. The concerns I have, well, on the positive side, Parkhurst does a really good job generally with the aesthetics. And I think the development has done a good job. But the first time I came in, we told them they had to simplify. It was like too much. And that I'd be interested when you come back, if you could focus on some 3-dimensional views to make sure that you're not trying to do too much in terms of geometry, roof lines. Sometimes it is a gas station. The one in our neighborhood is Knightsville, and it's good to have something that makes a statement because everything else doesn't make a statement at all. Whereas here, the statement is that neighborhood, and it's a huge neighborhood. And I'm just trying to get a sense of, what's the right amount of massing, setback, peaks, whatever. And then the other piece of it is, I've never liked these sort of Western town facades where it looks like a gable end, but it only goes back 10 or 20 feet. And that's a sightline issue. Like if you can't see it from the street, I don't care if it's 10 or 20 feet deep, but if you can, it just looks kind of like truncated. So I'm looking at your right side elevation and left side elevation where there's, I assume that's the main, pediment goes back, but it doesn't go like all the way back.
That would be the rear facade. Pediment doesn't go all the way across.
Oh, the
building.
rear gable, the entry?
Yeah,
Rear entry?
yeah. Can you see on the
It
side
does-
of it?
It does not at the moment. go all the way
Well, it doesn't need to if you can't see it. So I don't want you to extend it if nobody can see it anyhow. I think you have to bring it far enough back so you can't tell that it's a false gable.
back. Gotcha.
And you can only tell that from the perspective. So again, I try and make sure you're not making it more complicated than it needs to be. And that we look at what you can actually see. Other than that, I think just a little picky, the left side elevation, those two doors to the right aren't as successful as the one to the left. So I don't think you can really integrate a service door into those barn doors. I think you're better off to just say it's a service door and we're gonna skip the barn doors on those two locations.
So
Those are electrical panels.
that's an electrical panel.
Same thing. It's the same thing. It's just like, if the doors read as barn doors, I would do it. If it's a door, like you have to the left or electrical panels, it's probably better to not say there's a barn door and we're gonna stick a big panel in front of it. It would be better to pick another material and just let the panels be the panels. I think it would look better. That's good. That's picky. That's personal. It's just something for you to think about.
You might want to consider making the rear elevation look more like the front. Because your rear elevation is really your front. Public who's not gonna, they're not your customer, all they're gonna see is your rear. And you'd be better off to increase the presentation on that elevation and make it better than what it is, make it look better from the street. Because once you get into the gas station and you're into pumps, you got the canopy in the way, you're not gonna see all that grand design that you've got on the front elevation.
Well, it does tie in well to when you walk into the building, we redesigned the interior. So when you walk into the front door of the building. It's
Well, that's all good. I'm not saying do away with it, but you ought to do the same thing just about on the street side. Make it a faux presentation, whatever, because that's where the public is gonna see it. And then you're running out of space to put screens for those electrical panels. That's good. You're just gonna have to look at that very carefully because you gotta have 3 foot clear away from the panel. And then you gotta have your 5 foot sidewalk. Just gotta run out of space there and see what you can do there.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do with the front and rear is, the front is the front. The front's the main entry. That's where most parking is gonna be. That's where, yeah, you're gonna see it. Most people are gonna see the front. They're gonna see that front entry with the high glass and high tower. That's my entry.
Well,
So in the back, we were just trying to keep it,
it's gonna be hard to see the front though, sitting under the gas pumps with a canopy over your head and everything else. It's gonna block your view.
Can you go back to the plan, Tim?
And-
On
and
this?
But you need to look at that. I'm just saying.
So thank you for bringing, I agree with you. I think one thing that we really took into consideration was, again, the sawmill guidelines does speak to the fact that sort of where that roundabout is. This isn't just the commercial edge, it's also kind of the central hub too. They wanted the main facades facing that way. I know we have a gas canopy
Well,
between
you
that,
can
but
see it from development. They've got a lot going on behind you,
yes.
all the way down to the canal.
Yep.
There's a lot happening down there.
Well, that's a very valid point though, about you almost need to see those, excuse me, building elevations with the canopy of the gas pumps in front of it, really, so you can get view, because like Bill said, you're only going to see that front if you're kind of under the canopies, but if you're going down this little frontage road or whatever this is, it's really a different perspective than what we're kind of seeing here. And this is one where we can't make you do it, but I think if you did have a 3D model, which you probably do already, we could kind of see it. I think the roofs are, I'm concerned that there's so many different gables going on, and I echo what Greg was saying about it only goes, main one only goes a certain distance and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of think if we saw a 3D model, I might be inclined to drop the 2 peaked roofs on each side and make it kind of more flat, but just conversation, not requirement per se.
I also think the Berlin Myers elevation is very opaque and will be dark. And even though, you know, your front is where your gas pumps are, we have a community, you know, point of view. So we're looking at what the majority of traffic going down Berlin Myers is actually seeing. And, you know, I
Let's go
think
back
it's
to
very
the
opaque.
elevation then. I think that's a good point, Peter. What is Berlin G. Myers look like? What does that elevation look like at night? Can you go back, Tim?
Well, and I think, very not to interrupt, but I think what we need to see with Sawmill and some other new developments coming is what does that entire street elevation look like? Because you're gonna have the MUSC building and the gas station. So how does that all work together? And right now, we're just trying to remember it. I don't remember what the MUSC building looks like, but it's really important to make sure all this looks right in context.
I recall they put they did study that and made sure there was light, a lot of windows on the Berlin Myers side.
Is that an office building?
It is. It's
It's a doctor's office.
Yeah, it's hard to get all that and.
No, I understand that.
Saying that, it just needs to look like it belongs.
Yeah.
So you can't go, you know, solid dark and then all of a sudden brightness. And I think it's just a matter of lighting.
But in this case, it could be exterior building lighting to compensate for the opaque facade. Unless you're gonna get enough from street light, which I doubt.
Yeah, on that elevation as it is, there's two bracket lights at
Mhm.
P3, and then there's two hanging lights that come off of the post, you know, a timber beam that's. So we can certainly add some kind of. We're gonna have to add something anyway.
Yeah. And I assume it's a conscious design decision to make the Berlin Myers elevation asymmetrical versus the symmetry on the gas pump side. What is it thinking there?
Essentially that is the plan, you know, the plan that has been developed in the front entry, we're working with what we had. So we were changing the facade to meet the requirements of Sawmill. As we saw it. And that's where the door was. So in this case, I didn't have an issue with bringing that gable and making it asymmetrical on that side.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it should be symmetrical. I'm just trying to understand why the facades
It's
are
purely
so,
full plan, but it's
Form follows function is.
perfect.
yeah, no, but it does form follows function anymore. It's all about creating an image, an extension of the community is the trump card. And I think the issue of what is it, how does it relate to the other buildings is a good one. But I'm just thinking that to have one building has two fronts and to have one symmetrical and one asymmetrical, I'm just not seeing like a historic precedent where that's done. It just seems really odd visually. If they're both asymmetrical, that makes sense. Both symmetrical makes sense. But to have one way and one the other, that's not site driven seems a little peculiar. And again, it may be fine. I'm not saying change it. It just,
Yeah, they just won't, they're not gonna be seen at the same time. Right? So one's gonna be at the front, one's gonna be at the other side. So I don't know that, I get your point, understood.
yeah, and
I think your
yeah.
point is more, how does that look with the rest? You're trying to look at it from a macro level.
Yeah.
Sawmill and then
Yeah.
in this. specific
And
development.
at some point,
We
you know,
can tie that
right.
together.
And it used to be, it was gas station, here's what it looks like. I think Parker's has raised the bar for everybody in the industry and has done some really nice designs. And I hope this one ends up being like the best of the ones you have so far, because I think the site justifies a really, really great looking building.
Thank you. We've got two groups of people to satisfy, so I think it'll certainly be one of our best.
Yeah. They're gonna ask you to simplify. They're gonna ask you to make it more
Exactly,
complicated.
That's what I'm worried about.
You always try your best. I'll tell you, I'll give you that for sure. So, and it's appreciated. And last time I'm gonna say it, but as the front elevation, I'm just not convinced that needs to be completely symmetrical with towers on both ends. So I would just ask you to kind of look at that, and that, I think, for me, leads to the complication of the roof. If it ends up being that, I'm not gonna, beat you up about it, but to me, it's like it just does not need to be overly symmetrical. So. Any further discussion? Any comments or site?
Just to be clear, where you have the herringbone pattern and the grid in front of it, that's supposed to be a green wall?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's mounted on the herringbone brick, there's a metal lattice. And then we grow Confederate jasmine from a bed underneath it.
Just
It
like
fills in.
just before you go over the interstate. There's a gas station on the left has that.
Yeah, the elevations that you see the grid with the gables, that's where the green wall is. On the two ends there where the door is and the ladder, that's just a herringbone. There's no green wall there.
Any other comments or any direction or anything?
Thank you all very much.
All right,
Thank you.
looking forward to it. You. Tim, anything else?
I know that it's been brought up a couple of times about the possibility of changing meeting nights. We would need to take a look at that and see, because we have to balance town council, other board meetings. We have the Board of Zoning Appeals, we have the Board of Architectural Review, so on and so forth, that all need to coordinate and fit into the schedule. If we were to implement any changes to that, we would not be able to start those changes until next year. So we would need to be.
Good time to start looking at it.
So if it's something that you guys are serious about pursuing, I've already brought it up with Jesse about having that discussion and looking at our schedules and seeing how it fits in with all of the other boards and things that we have to accommodate throughout the month. So it would definitely be something that would change.
We really don't like it on third Thursday.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we never get an opportunity to go
Sure.
Thursday.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very unusual for them by now.
Would-
And you can't park.
Would anybody be in favor of having this at, say, 9 o'clock in the
I
morning?
like
9
Okay.
o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't
first thing.
commit to that.
you to go,
Hmm?
can you do that sometime
No.
once a month?
9, I don't know.
You don't know.
I think we're usually done in 2 hours.
It just.
I can
you're gonna
do
get it
any
over
time
with
of
and you Go do your
the
day.
day. And any day of the week, except for third Thursday, because you got the problems with that,
I wouldn't want it to be on a Friday.
Uh,
I wouldn't want it to be on a Friday, but
No,
Friday, bad news.
Friday's not a
Bad.
good day.
But what about second Thursday? Would that be better?
Second Thursday is VAR.
No, BAR is on a Tuesday. BAR council is a Thursday. I believe it's the second Thursday, so that would be problematic. Planning Commission is on a Monday. So as I said, I think what we will do is we'll look at the schedule, and I know that council has always been concerned about having these meetings in the mornings. It's difficult because it is a public meeting. We don't hold public hearings, but if somebody has a concern about a project that comes to the board, 9 a.m. is, or during the day is much more difficult for the general public.
But in 20 years, we, with the exception of me being the public comment, we've had one. That
Well,
was,
I can think of a couple of projects in the last 7 years, but it is a small handful, but I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying it's rare, but that is always the biggest concern brought up. So we'll take a look at it and we can discuss further. Obviously, we usually don't approve the new meeting schedule until November is when I usually put that together and get that ready to go, but it's always been on the third Thursday of every month. So
Would it be better if we got vouchers to use it third Thursday? Then we could, then you wouldn't feel as bad.
could be the Somerville Design Review Board, brought to you by whomever. It is at the discretion of the chairman.
yeah, I used to ask if there's any public comment, but there was no one ever here, so. Yeah, stop.
But this would be for 2024.
Yes, we wouldn't be able to, we could, but generally speaking, we have it published. It's within the citizen serve portal. All of the schedules are set.
Best case would be November or something crazy, so just wait till January.
Yeah, it would make more sense just to wait till January if changes are feasible and possible to get done.
Is there anything you need from us to help guide you with suggestions or dates or anything, or y'all just want to get back to us?
I will talk with Jesse about it. We'll have a more comprehensive, because we deal with the vast majority of the citizen committees. So we'll have a better idea on scheduling. I'll bring something back to you guys and we can work that detail out.
Well, if we did a morning, could we do 8? Because what is this, like a resort?
Yeah, it's great. I love the 8:30 start.
Day's half over by 8.
Now I wake up at 5:40, but yeah.
All right, anything else?
Nope.
I'm just like, okay, is there, I think I sent Matt made a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Candy is what I thought I heard. Right, you seconded the motion to adjourn, is that what I heard?
I did do that.
Okay,
yes.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Good luck.
Brilliant.